Hello, welcome to On the Couch with Nikki, where I bring you experts for expats. I'm coming to you from the gorgeous King Living showroom in Kalang Avenue, and I'm sitting comfortably today on the King Boulevard sofa. So, who's on the couch with me today? I have Spencer Chu from the Consilium Law Corporation here to talk about the D word, divorce. Very prevalent in expat world today, unfortunately, so we're going to shed some light on some questions that you might have. Spencer, thank you very much for coming and sitting with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Divorce is not the most joyful topic, but very prevalent in expat life. Let's say the trailing spouse is female.
All right.
And decides that she wants to divorce.
Right.
What advice would you give somebody just as a starting point? Where to start? Because it's obviously a very emotional time, can be very stressful. What's the first step?
First and foremost, I would say, would they like to try out a separation period to enter into a deed of separation, which may or may not result in a divorce.
Where do people live if they're going to be separated? They need two dwellings, which can be quite expensive. It can be unaffordable to a lot of people.
That's actually a common misconception. It is possible for both parties to be separated but remain living under the same household. I know it's not the easiest.
Okay, living separately yet together.
Yes, so it is possible for one party to move out of the matrimonial bedroom, for example, into another room, and that can constitute separation. And if parties have decided that there is absolutely no chance of reconciliation, and the deed of separation isn't going to work for them, then it would appear that a divorce would be imminently commenced. Here in Singapore, divorce is a two-step process. The first step entails informing or preparing documents and informing the court of the reasons for the irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. One of 5 facts can be relied upon in support of this, which would be adultery, the unreasonable behavior of the spouse, a desertion of 2 years, separation with consent of 3 years, or separation of 4 years without any consent. So forwarding these reasons for the breakdown of the marriage, the court would push the matter to be heard uncontested. This would the spouse would be given the opportunity to file a defense and/or counterclaim. The courts again encourage parties not to have this first step or this first stage of the proceedings contested, and would assign the matter for a court mediation session if there are children involved. Assuming the matter doesn't get contested, an interim judgment can be granted. The thing to note is that if parties are hostile and the matter does go for a contested hearing, this has no impact on the ancillary matters, which comes about in the second stage of the divorce. It is only then that the courts will look at the ancillary matters, or to break it down, the children's issues of custody, care, control and access, maintenance issues, both for the wife, for the child, and in certain circumstances now in Singapore for the husband, as well as division of matrimonial assets.
Okay. With relocation, because it obviously usually would include the woman wanting to go back to her home country.
If her intention is to really relocate from Singapore back to her home country or elsewhere in the world, she would want to obtain a written consent from her husband, allowing her to relocate with the children. The court's paramount consideration would be what's in the child's best interest, what's in the children's best interest. They balance this against the deprivation of the joint custodian, the left behind parents' rights. I mean, the stress of it is a huge factor.
Yeah.
Having to collect documentation, having to meet deadlines, legal deadlines, filing your affidavits.
Yeah.
On top of that is the cost of it. The cost of having to go to trial for your ancillary matters, and it might be years from the time you commence your divorce till you actually have your ancillary matters heard. So it's time, it's money, and
What
it's
sort
a
of money are we
huge stress
talking
to
about?
it.
Ballpark.
The party is potentially looking at 3 to 4 years of litigation and a 6-digit sum,
A 6-digit sum.
possibly.
Okay, that's really
Well,
limiting for a lot of people.
Exactly, which is why the courts have also taken it upon themselves to introduce more mediatory routes.
So hold on. So people
yes.
may choose. That can kind of work in your favour
Mm-hmm.
for it to be amicable.
Mm-hmm.
If both partners say to each other, "We can be wiped out financially if we do this
It
the
is.
hard way, or we can do it peacefully if
Correct.
possible."
And oftentimes it's only midway through. You sometimes see that parties only realize it midway through the litigation proceedings that
This is crazy.
not only have they spent so much time and money, not only have they been so stressed out about the proceedings, but it impacts their children as well. The courts want parties to understand that the end of the marriage doesn't result in the end of the co-parenting relationship that carries on forever, at least until the child hits the age of majority. Here in Singapore, the courts generally make orders for joint custody of the children, and it's really in exceptional circumstances where you would see an order for sole custody to either parent.
I also just want to clarify one thing, because I know that there's a lot of confusion about this. A woman can't, even if she's going away on holidays with the children, sneakily decide, we're just not going to come back.
No, definitely not.
Okay.
I would say as a matter of prudence, even when you're going away on a short holiday with the children, get a form of written consent. Set out the itinerary in full, which country you're going to, which hotel, and get the spouse to sign that written consent. If, as you mentioned, tries to sneakily head off to another country, then it becomes potentially an issue for the Hague Convention, and it's strongly advised that
It's considered kidnapping, isn't it?
it is. It's child abduction. It's a serious matter. There are
And you would be forced to come back. I think that there can be a misconception that, I've made it back to my home country with the children, I'm safe.
Yes,
But that's not necessarily the case.
A hearing will be commenced, and if it's found that the child ought to be returned to Singapore, that order will be made, and you will be labelled. That this person will be labelled as a child abductor as well, and that label sticks.
Okay.
I'd like to address another common misconception regarding Hague Convention applications. Oftentimes, people believe that the Hague Convention or the Hague Convention hearing would deal with matters of custody, care and control, the children's issues. This isn't accurate. The Hague Convention hearing merely decides which jurisdiction is best suited to hear matters for custody, care and control. The Hague Convention hearing only decides whether the child ought to remain in the country in which they have moved to, or ought to be returned back to, say, Singapore. And it's in that particular jurisdiction, depending on where the child ends up, that you can then argue custody issues.
Okay. If a woman is thinking about divorce and hasn't said anything yet, is there anything before she mentions it to her husband, is there anything that you would advise she collate just to be prepared that she may not have access to once she mentions it? Should she get across her finances? Should she start logging or diarising?
It would be prudent to gather as much evidence to assist in their matter from an early stage, purely because once the matter goes to court and is litigated, the timelines are fairly tight, and this would result in a lot of stress for the party to collate such documents.
Yes.
So it is always prudent to start as soon as possible, and I often tell my clients to gather their information from as early a stage as possible.
Okay. So the first stage, if somebody wants to get a divorce, is speak to your partner, see if you can work it out. If not, can they both go through the same lawyer, legal team?
It is possible.
Just to save money?
It is certainly possible to parties to do that. They can engage a neutral lawyer, third-party lawyer, as a mediator.
Thank you so much, Spencer, for coming in today. I'm sure your information has helped a lot of people. Divorce is very emotional for everybody involved. It's really important to consider all options available to you. Arm yourself with the knowledge. It's obviously a very complicated, messy process. It can be very costly. Try and mediate with your partner if you can first, and then get some professional legal advice. Thank you for watching On the Couch with Nikki. Thank you to King Living for having me, and I'll see you next time.